Welcome to Behind the Barcode, the podcast that goes beyond the label to uncover the stories of the faces behind your favorite products. We're your hosts, Anna and Sydney.
In this podcast, we dive into the dynamic world of consumer packaged goods with a focus on better-for-you products. As entrepreneurs ourselves, we know firsthand the challenges and triumphs of bringing a product to market. That's why we're here to share the journeys of fellow innovators, industry experts, and entrepreneurs who are making waves in the CPG space.
Join us as we sit down with inspiring guests to explore the stories behind the UPC codes, uncovering the passion, perseverance, and purpose driving their businesses forward. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a budding startup, or simply curious about the stories behind the products you love, this podcast is for you.
So grab your favorite snack and get ready to go behind the barcode. Today we have Forbes Fisher, Behind the Barcode, CPG founder, product formulator, and operator. Hi, Forbes.
Hi, Sydney.
I am so excited to have you on our podcast today. We've known each other actually quite a few years now. I met you at Erewhon corporate offices when you were working with Dirty Lemon, distributing beverages.
It's true, yes. I was basically a truck driver.
Okay.
That drove a Mini Cooper.
Yes, but you're definitely more than a truck driver. Before we get into the questions for everyone, can you tell us about yourself and how long you've been in the CPG industry?
Yeah, I got into CPG I was living in New York, worked in real estate development, and the first financial crisis hit in 2008, and ended up launching an ice cream company called Steve's Ice Cream. It's actually a relaunch of an older brand, and built Steve's in New York and nationally for about 6 or 7 years. That's really where I cut my teeth and kind of, learned all the things that now I can share with you. I founded and was CEO of a company called Canopy Foods, which we did a lot of private label manufacturing, was a co-packer essentially, but we did a lot of private label manufacturing for Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. We eventually got the contract for Rao's pasta sauce domestically, so a lot of it was made in Italy, but we were the domestic supplier, and did all sorts of, we did pet food, plant-based protein type stuff, a lot of frozen meals. So we did a lot of stuff there. So I learned from formulation and kind of creating and commercializing product. I learned a lot there. And then I left the Northeast, came to LA, and then I met you I worked for Iris Nova, which owned Dirty Lemon, and we helped launch like Sanzo and Something and Nothing and a few other brands.
Beverages.
Beverages. Kind of a beverage D2C platform Yes. That we then went into wholesale, and then after that, I've kind of advised different companies and kind of go in and I work with a number of companies now, like Moku, Fronen. There's kind of a hot sauce that's launching that I can't really speak about yet, but that I GM, and then kind of advise people and advise to different brands. So.
Yeah. Amazing. Where your value is that you have done a variety of different products. Like everything you just named, you named pasta sauce, ice cream, and beverages, which are completely different spaces.
You cover the whole store.
And I know this from you, if somebody wants to manufacture a product and they don't know where to start, they would come to someone like you to say, hey, I have this flavor in mind of this beverage. I want it to taste like this. I want it to be carbonated. And you are the formulator in the sense that I've seen you have different samples of different beverages.
You've been there,
yeah.
You've actually been there so many times.
Yes.
I've been like with Amaz, I was helping him with something.
It's so cool because a lot of founders don't know how to access different manufacturers or who's reputable or who's not. But anyways, the formulation space is very interesting.
Yeah, to your point, like I think if you're going to start a brand, I think the number one thing to do is make it how you want it. Like if you can only make it in your house and that's what it is and that's what you can do, make that, and then go to people like me or other formulators, or a lot of times you can get the manufacturers to formulate if it's a good manufacturer, but bring your like North Star or like whatever you think what you want your product to be there. If it's something that's like a gummy or something that's kind of harder for you to make at home, I think it's a little bit difficult, but I think you really taking the time to sketch out what the parameters are, what are the unique things that you have to have. Like that's what defines your product, and what are the nice to haves, but you would, because it's always manufacturing is always a compromise.
Yes. And on the point of manufacturing, can you tell us about co-packers, contract manufacturers, manufacturing in general, I think that is one of the most common questions that Anna and I get, which is we want to start a product, we don't know who to go to. Do you start it by yourself? Do you go to a co-packer? And for everyone listening, a co-packer is a manufacturer who essentially, a co-manufacturer makes the product for you instead of you making the product.
Then also, can you explain like when someone should start looking for a co-packer if they're making the product themselves in a commercial kitchen? Like, how do you know when it's time to scale and start looking for a co-packer?
Look, I don't want to say people shouldn't do the commercial kitchen route because there's definitely products that it makes a lot of sense. But I think if you really want your product to be viable in the wider marketplace, I think you really need to, I would go to a co-packer sooner rather than later. It is a very hard thing to navigate in the beginning in terms of just figuring out, it's a whole network that's kind of, I don't know, it's hard to break into unless you know people. So I think that's why like resources like this are really great. I think, Startup CPG and some of the other, people have great resources with different lists of co-packers. But I think in the beginning, it really pays to be close to the product because at Steve's Ice Cream, the first company I founded, we self-manufactured for a long time. And then we scaled it into a manufacturer in Michigan. And so I used to fly out there and like at 4 a.m. I'd be like on the line, like eating ice, like so much ice cream. I've eaten so much ice cream.
Nobody talks about that, by the way, in the food space, is that you have to try, test, taste everything. And sometimes it's exhausting. Even working for Erewhon too, sampling, everyone is like, wow, what a dream job. And I told Anna, it's like, you're eating sardines and then dark chocolate and then donuts and then soy sauce, crackers. I don't even know. Starting off is hard, and I think it's very specific to different products. Like I think there's certain products you can kind of start small, and there's certain products like crackers. You're not gonna, if you want to make crackers, you probably are gonna need to like go big, Right. But I think my number one thing in co-packing is, it's really important to find a co-packer that's product-oriented over process-oriented. And so many co-packers, they want it to run cleanly, they want it to run well, which is great. Everyone wants it to run well, but sometimes you need the, like, I'll give the example at the ice cream factory. These guys were all ex-auto workers because an auto parts billionaire had bought the local ice cream factory and made it like crazy. It's the nicest factory I've ever been in. It's like I would literally, it's the only factory I would have ever eaten off the floor. Wow. Like literally. It's like if someone dropped something, like two guys came out of a door, cleaned it up, and then like ran back. It was very weird. But anyway, so they're all like engineers that worked at this place. So when we first went there, we were running it out of this old, in our factory, we were running out of this old machine right into the pint. So like literally someone was holding a pint at the end of the continuous freezer, just going like this. And in these places, the machines were bigger. You're running longer pipe runs to the fillers. And so I was tasting it, and I was like, oh, the texture's off. Like, we need to run it a little bit warmer, like a degree warmer, like 25 degrees instead of 24 degrees. Anyway, so by doing that, it made the product right. But there's like a little tail. So each 2 pints would get filled, and there'd be this little tail. I know what you're talking about.
And the guys were like, can we just like put stabilizer in there to like make sure it fills clean? And I was like, well, no, that like defeats the whole purpose. We just tweaked all this to get the texture right. I don't want to throw a bunch of stabilizer in it. Yeah. So, they were very process oriented in the sense of, we want this to run clean, not we want to make a really clean product, the texture right and everything. So I think finding someone who's product oriented or making sure that they're oriented around making good product first is number one. Another big thing I see is, it seems very simple, but when you go to a co-packer, negotiate tiered pricing. What it allows you to do is, like, if you're making 10,000 units a month and your next tier is at 50, and you have an account that you can't make the margin work, but it would work, they'd sell 50,000, maybe the margin works at the next pricing level. So it's just really important for how you think about your sales rollout to know how your additional sales impact your costs. It's super important. So for anyone listening, basically what we're saying is that when you are negotiating with the manufacturer, it's to know in the future, as you go up in volume, in terms of quantities, the price should theoretically go down. And it's important to have that conversation sooner rather than later. I know this for French Squirrel. Sometimes there are times where an account wants a certain price. For example, I'm just going to say Sprouts. They want a certain retail price on the shelf, and typically
maybe French Squirrel could not make that happen in the present day, but to know with the manufacturer that after a certain amount of units that it can go down, then you would pass that price on to the consumer, which I think a lot of consumers say to, I believe both Anna and I, why is your product so expensive?
Yeah.
And it's like with small businesses, I don't want to charge that much money. I want to make it accessible for people, but we also have to make money too.
So how do you know if it's a fair price for a co-packer? And then also, how do you negotiate?
I think it really comes down to seeing what the comps in your space are. And I would always encourage people to go to manufacturing plants and take tours, because you can learn a lot just on the tour. Like, you can look around and see who they make. Like, they may not, you may ask them, like, who are you making here? And they'd be like, well, we aren't really at liberty to share that.
Yeah.
If you're walking around the plant, you can kind of be like, okay, you can see who they're making, you can see what ingredients they're getting, what packaging companies are using.
Like, it's all time.
Yeah,
labor is time.
Yeah, exactly. It's all time and throughput. Like, how many can you make in an hour or a shift? And then what's the labor and contribution? It's called contribution overhead. Like, if they're running 10 lines, they have a fixed overhead for that day, and you should pay a tenth of it plus whatever the labor on that line is.
Yeah.
Is really.
And I know from the chocolate space, running lines with different allergens too. So it's not even just the production time, it's the setup and the cleanup. And you have to do a whole thorough wash of the enrobing machine if you're doing peanut, almond, whatever it is. And so that it takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time, and like, like an ice cream and a lot of products, but ice cream is the easiest one to illustrate. It's like, you can run a line continuously. You could run vanilla and then push into chocolate and then push into chocolate with peanuts. So you can push the allergens as long as you put them at the end, which also gets your price down. So there's lots of little things. But I think to know if you have a fair price, what I would say is know your margin structure. And then you can kind of like tell, if you find a like-sized brand, what they're retailing at, like an Erewhon, and you kind of know the general margin structure, then I think you can kind of tell, like, oh, are these people? Or if you go, you kind of know what another brand who's manufacturing their, kind of what their pricing is, and the margin structure, you can kind of compare. You kind of know what they're getting it for, what the ballpark is, and if you're in that ballpark. But it's hard, especially with unique products that, and there's two different ways. You can obviously do exit pricing, where the co-packer buys everything and gives you a finished price, or you can do tolling, where they're just charging you for the manufacturing and you're sending in all the ingredients and packaging. For me, I like to always do exit pricing if I can, because it forces the co-man to assume the loss factor. So if I send in enough to make 1,000 pints of ice cream and they make 800, I'm the one paying for all those ingredients, because I paid for all the ingredients going in. But if they're just charging me per pint, then I just pay for 800 pints of ice cream.
Yeah, that's debatable in the industry is which one is better.
Yeah,
I've done both for French Squirrel. One where the manufacturer provides the finished product, they buy everything on the back end, and then the other one where French Squirrel buys the ingredients and they charge us a labor price per unit. And as you said, I know Anna and I are both sticklers about ingredient quality.
Yeah.
I prefer to buy the ingredients myself, not even to know about the quantity. That's obviously important, that they're making everything that they say they're making, but the quality.
Yeah. When I do exit pricing, I stipulate what they have to buy.
Well, yes, that too.
And that comes with size.
Yes.
You can't do it.
But the benefit of having the manufacturer buy the ingredient, though, is that typically they have more storage. They have better relationships with ingredient suppliers to order multiple pallets of almond butter instead of French Squirrel, who, based on cash flow of a small business, can only order a couple pails at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pros and cons to both, right?
Yeah.
I tend to like the exit pricing. Negotiating is like, I think using a lawyer is good, because it's an agreement, and it's a big agreement, so you want to include your lawyer. But I think finding someone who in the business has done it before, because I can just tell you, like, you can craft win-win relationships. Like, what I'm good at in the industry is really trying to craft a win-win. Like, I know what a co-packer needs or is important to them, and what is important to a brand. So I was actually talking to a pasta sauce brand this morning about that. I was like, the sad part is these things become very adversarial very quickly and easily, and it's unnecessary. It's like, if a co-packer is willing to be open book for the most part, not just overshare information, but they're willing to be open book and say, we'll give you these price breaks at these sizes. The brand knows how they can plan, and you can build a partnership together. From a negotiating standpoint, my thing is like negotiate from the middle. Don't try and make something that's fair, where like maybe you start off at a higher price in the beginning, but you get to where you need to be with scale. And empathize with the fact of what the co-packer needs and the co-packer's cost. And if both sides kind of empathize a little bit, I think typically it's pretty easy to craft a long-term deal.
Very cool. And so my product before our sea moss gel packets, we used to sell the sea moss gel in a glass jar, and we were making that all in a commercial kitchen, and then eventually like had way too much of a demand, so we needed to look for a co-packer. And because the product was so unique and it hadn't really been done before, we were reaching out to hundreds of co-packers before we got a yes, or someone that was at least like willing to learn more about the product because it was so unique. So do you have any like tips for someone that's creating something that maybe hasn't really been done before and they're looking for a co-packer? Because I remember feeling like so defeated until we finally got someone that was willing to listen to the process.
Yeah, I would say there's not very many products that you can't find a manufacturer. I think it's more the mindset of the manufacturer. There's a lot of people who like, they want to come in and...
I want snaps for that.
I love that.
That was great.
Co-packer is an investor. Co-packer's not going to make any money for, like the startup cost for a co-packer, like on a new thing and getting all your suppliers onboarded and all that stuff. They're an investor.
And it has to be someone who's an innovator too. Like even if you don't have a solution now, it's okay, how can we make this process faster, not only for us, but for you?
Yeah. When it's also a process, like when I was in manufacturing, like I'd start off by doing things like by hand, right, for certain things. Like if there's a particularly problematic thing that we didn't have a piece of equipment for, it's like, okay, let's do that by hand. And then once you figure it out and you have the scale, you say, okay, like there's probably a machine we can do that for, and we can invest that machine because now we know the payback's going to be in like 3 months or 6 months. Knowing what are the pain points, because I always say in manufacturing too, it's almost like a 12-dimensional problem. You always have like some of the equipment, some of the labor. Like every plant you walk into, you have to do something. It's like there's always some things, but not all of them are present. It's very rare. You're like, especially with an innovative product. It's a partnership. You got to build, you got to start where you can and understand where it is. And I think, again, you got to find someone you got to approach them like they're an investor, and it's a long-term relationship. And then they have to be innovative and it has to be the right partner. You don't want to jump. It's the same thing with having bad investors. You don't want to jump in with someone right away. In the short term, it might help you to have that money, but in the long term, if they're not the right partner, it's going to hurt you. So I think, you might have called hundreds of co-packers, but you did the right thing. Are you in a place now that's like good?
Yeah, well, our product, we completely changed over with a manufacturer now, and they're amazing.
Yeah, nice.
Like have very high standards for ingredients and products and completely aligned.
One thing to mention too, another reason to go to co-packers early, you don't want to skimp on that. So you want to find people who have good food safety records. I mean, to be honest, like when I started in the industry in like 2010, I would go to, I won't name the retailer, but like it's a retailer owned by a large e-commerce giant now. I would like not buy some stuff there because I knew some of the stuff was like literally being made in people's kitchens, which there's nothing wrong with that. But
no, we know what you're talking about. The made in a home kitchen. A lot of people won't eat those products. I think this is a really important point that you highlight because I get asked that all the time personally. When do you go to a co-packer? I agree, as soon as possible. And my dad always says to me, are you the manufacturer or are you the business owner? Which one are you? And at first I was making it myself. So was Anna and her co-founder Alex with our products. And you have to decide. You're like, your strength, my strength is in marketing and sales. And why, I think the most tired I've been in my life was when I was making my own products.
Well, yeah, and I think your sales, every brand is a sales and marketing company first. Yeah. And there may be one day where you in-house your manufacturing if you get big enough. Hopefully you do, and you get that margin. But it's a tough enough game being a sales and marketing company. So that cash flow, the overhead, all that stuff, you want to push off to a third party.
Totally. Okay, so I want to switch gears and talk about something that you've helped me and French Squirrel a lot on, which is distribution. And so for anyone listening, to be in the CPG space, you got to know about distributors.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that French Squirrel does business directly with Erewhon, with Foxtrot, with Jimbo's, with Mother's, with Bristol Farms. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Food brands do business with the distributor, who's the delivery service, third-party delivery service, who then services the store. And in order to get into certain retailers, you have to be in certain distributors, vice versa. So this is a loaded question, but can you talk about the hidden fees and the costs that people don't tell you about in this industry when it comes to UNFI and KeHE, who are large distributors, freight, pickup fees, deductions? I know it's a lot.
No.
We can start basic, but...
Well, I think the place you have to start with that is that I think a lot of people don't zoom out and understand until you're in the business. Is just that, like, the way that I guess I wouldn't lay the caveat down that, like, the food business is kind of broken. I mean, the whole food, I mean, you can say the food system is broken, but I think part of the way it is it's pricing. I think, prices are artificially, like, deflated by big companies like Unilever and Nestle, big portfolio companies. And so when you have a product that's made with real stuff, that's not made at a massive scale coming to market, it looks really expensive because over the years they've just kept those prices down as much as possible against inflation. So that's one thing. But to get to distribution, the way the distribution is broken is UNFI and KeHE basically go to these retailers and promise them a margin, to sell them at a price that they can't afford to sell them to get the deal. And you probably know this even better than me because I've never worked at a retailer, but you have.
So French Squirrel is with UNFI and Akasha is with KeHE.
Oh, nice.
So we're divided together. I don't know.
But so then what they do is, and because they can't work off that number, they come, they can't really, they need the retailer because that's what keeps them in business. But with the brands that cycle through, they just nickel and dime you. So, when people start in the industry and they, get into Whole Foods or, one of those, and they say, UNFI works on a cost plus 8. So that's, okay, my product costs X, and I'm going to add some margin for myself, and then I'll do this is my price to UNFI, and then cost plus 8. Well, in reality, you then have to be part of the advertising, the bronze, silver, gold, platinum advertising for UNFI. New DC opening fees. Not many people understand UNFI as a West and East. It's one public company that has two operating entities on the West and East, and you need to be coded in both, and that's a nice fee to get coded in both.
Yes, everything. So for anyone listening, everything has a fee with distribution. So even though you're putting in a price in the Excel sheet, which is what Forbes helped me with French Squirrel, it's putting in a price of what our product is per case, knowing that there are all these fees that they're going to subtract from you.
Yeah. Though instead of working on a cost plus 8, like they're selling on a cost plus 8, really it becomes, in my mind, 15% to 20%. That's before, that's not with trade spend and stuff. That's just what their cost is with all the fees and everything. So I think it's, it's an important thing to understand because I think pricing and margin, I mean, that's what I told you when I was like, look, pricing is, honestly, it's like the biggest mistake I see most brands make, especially early on, because you have to do
talk about this.
Yeah, because you have to do it early on. It's the first thing you do, right? When you know probably the least. And so, I mean, to me, I think the number one thing people should seek out advice on this pricing, because I think you should always go to market more expensive than you think you should be, because you can always go down.
Yes,
you can never go up.
That's what Mark Cuban said.
I didn't realize I stole it from Mark Cuban. Sorry,
it's okay. But you can always lower the price.
Yeah, always go down. Or I can say is, like, if you go out at $9.99, you could put it on deal every day at $7.99. But if you go out at $7.99, you're never going to be at $9.99. So you can play with promotions and see what additional volume that gets you, and you might make a decision of, like, okay, now I'm just going to go $7.99 every day. But I think the biggest thing is understanding the margin build in terms of what your trade spend is going to be, like what the retailers are going to need, and what your trade spend and marketing support are going to be, which is the promotional support at the retailer. What the distributor margin is really going to be and the costs associated, and then what the market will bear, because that's part of the food system, is like, because a lot of these prices are artificially deflated, like,
Like, what can you get away with?
Yeah, what can you sell? I mean, you can't, you know, there's certain segments where it's like you could be $12.99 on shelf, but you're going to sell, you know, a tenth of what you would sell if you were $9.99.
Yes.
You know?
How many times did I say to you I was like $7.99 or $8.99 or $7.99, and I just kept going back and forth, and I texted friends and family asking, and it sounds so stupid, but the dollar is so important.
Yeah.
And you know, there's also, as you said, the annual advertising fees, which no one really knows what that is. In the food space, they just say annual advertising, which is just the cost of doing business with that distributor, and that's fine. But it's to know those fees up front, because a lot of people don't know.
And I will give Unify, I mean, they probably did this to avoid an antitrust lawsuit, but they did simplify some of their fees recently.
Yes,
just take it as like a percentage deduction, adding a percent. But so there is some movement in the right direction, but I think in general, you know, the reason I started from a very high level is like, I think it's just kind of the alignment between distributors and brands is kind of misaligned a little bit, and you just have to know that going into it so you can protect yourself.
Is there a way that we could fix that, you think, in the future? I
think so. I mean, I think it really comes from the retail standpoint of like, you know, the competition between the broadliners, which are KeHE and Unify, you know, and CNS and some of the other guys. The competition for the retailers, I think the retailers have to be involved in that more, and there's been a lot of consolidation there. Everyone's kind of gotten bigger. Like when I started, you could launch a brand in a region of Whole Foods and then go get another region. And then at Steve's, I had like 8 regions of Whole Foods, but I dealt with each regional head. I didn't deal with any global buyers. Now
the bureaucracy.
Yeah, now it's all global buyers, and like you could get in, a regional buyer could say go, and you'd be in like 30 days. You know, now the global buyers, you got to get to them, and then it's like usually a 6 to 9 months.
So I, for everyone listening, I also had a mistake. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Anna, maybe, but this is something I didn't know about UNFI and about just distribution in general, and it is my fault. I didn't know, but you know, there's a guaranteed minimum shelf life that they have.
Yeah.
And so we were launching into the fresh market, which is how we got into UNFI, and that was our biggest launch. And I had product that was within shelf life code. It was great. It had perfect amount of time, and we were expected to launch. They picked up our product in July of 2023. UNFI picks it up in July. I clearly remember I was on vacation in Israel. Yes.
Yeah, I remember we talked about it too.
I was on vacation in Israel, and I got the text message that it was picked up. It was in July. We did not get on the shelves of the fresh market until September. So I was like, oh wow, July, awesome, great, like it'll be on shelves in just a couple days.
Oh, yeah, no.
I mean, like I was so excited. It's gonna be on the shelf soon, guys.
Go into
like,
fresh market.
Yeah, like go into fresh market. It's gonna be on shelves. I had no idea that it's about even 90 days to get on the shelf, like
at all the store locations.
At all the stores, because it makes sense.
About 90 days.
There's so many stores.
Right.
There's 90
different planograms for different size stores. Yes. The execution is different in every store.
And we were in trouble because those few months that I didn't consider of the delay getting onto the shelves, it cut into our expiration date, and then we got a bill back, a charge back, saying that you sent all this product that was under the
70%.
minimum, the 72% shelf life something. Not that it was expired, it just they won't hold any product that's within the certain shelf life, and we were screwed. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
No, it's a lot of money, and it's hidden fees, and it's like it's
and
hard.
No one told me that.
And also the hard part about it is you didn't know, but also like it's really hard to give someone like Unified product that's you got to give it to them at 85% of the shelf life, which means a month after you probably made it.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And also it's like their poor execution then costs you money is really the hard part about all that. And I think that's the hard thing about the way that I think like I've seen the system move over the past 15 years, where it's just everything. Distributors have consolidated. Like there used to be more broadliners. There used to be Nature's Best for Sprouts. Then KeHE bought them, and KeHE bought DPI, and they bought all these things. And retailers, have consolidated and been bought and things like that. And so I think it's tough because it really just like the quality, when you have less I mean, I hate to say it, but it's a tenet of capitalism. Like when you have less competition, there's just no reason for anyone to be better at what they do. So, I think there are small players like in LA, there's High Touch and LAD, and I'm sure a myriad of other small players in New York. There's the Rainforest, the Gold Coast, the, Checks in certain regions. But there are these independent distributors. They're fewer and far between.
Foundation Foods, we love them.
We love Foundation.
Yeah, we love Foundation.
We both work with Foundation.
Yes.
I've never had the pleasure, but I think there's sometimes a higher cost there, but you just get better service. And I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing I coach people through, which I'll do because we were supposed to talk about this anyway.
Yes.
With like Rainforest is like, Rainforest works on a 25% margin, but usually how I tell people is like, with Unify, you're really probably going to pay 15%, not cost plus 8. Then you need a broker who's going to be 5%. Then you need a merchandiser who's going to be 5%. Whereas so you kind of end up in the same place. And I think a lot of people, naively, and it's no fault of their own, like when they say, okay, it's cost plus 8, well, that's what it is. So that's what it, and this is 25%. They can't reconcile that. Like, why are these people charging me 25%? But I think, there are some smaller players, and I'm a big proponent of building brands small, building them regionally, so you get feedback. You work with you build those brands with some of those different kinds of distributors, and whether it's regionally or in different kind of pockets nationally. It's better than trying to build on Unify and KeHE, frankly, where, and they serve their purpose too when you get bigger.
It's great, but as you said, I think also that was a struggle for us in the beginning too. With Unify is, yes, they picked up the product. We know it's in their warehouse, and I understand they have so many brands, but we would get messages from customers saying, oh, your product isn't on shelf at the Fresh Market. And I'm thinking, that's weird.
Yeah.
And the Fresh Market says it's on order with UNFI. So it's important to have what you said, like a merchandiser or even family friends going in and checking to see if it's on shelf or not. Because you genuinely, when you scale and you're, and Akasha just got into Fresh Time too.
Congrats, that'd be great.
Yes, in parts of the United States that we're not going to go to right now today, and we think it's on shelf and it's not.
No. Right. No, it's hard. I think I always tell people, it's like if everyone just said did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
You could be a one-man founder, like no one would need anybody else.
Yeah, right.
Logistics is always my favorite because it's like, I would just sit there, like when I would just sit there and you call these trucks, and I one time, it was actually for Irish Nova. I had a truck picking up some product in Texas, and the broker called me. He's like, the truck's 30 minutes out, because I called to check in because I was like, I just never trust any logistics.
Yes.
But and then he called me back 15 minutes later, and he's like, actually, the truck's in Arizona. It's 14 hours away, and I'm like, I bought this full truck. It's not like a LTL. I bought out this full truck. He was supposed to be there, 4 hours ago, but the truck had picked up a load along the way to try and, which was just crazy. But anyway, point being, it's like, if I didn't have to follow up with trucks and things like that, it'd be really easy if I just had to schedule it and be done. Yeah.
I have a question. So going back to the costs, can you break down, for example, if I was going to launch a spaghetti into 500 stores nationally, what are all of the costs?
One of the biggest things I think and tell people is don't rush. The biggest mistake I made in my first company is I thought I was competing with Jenny's. I was like, I gotta beat them into these areas. I was always looking at what they were doing, and it's so much easier to say than it is to do, or to hear than it is to do. But it's just focus on your own stuff, grow at your own speed. Now I know what that means. People would tell me that when I had my first company, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. But to that point, nowadays, if a retailer says I want to launch in 500, I'd be like, put me in 200. Let me figure out what really. Have more money to put towards that to really figure out what drives sales through your store, and then we'll put me in the 500. And buyers love that because it's okay, and don't rush for doors, which is what a lot of early founders do, but or first-time founders do. But in terms of the costs, I think first there's going to be slotting costs. So it's I think trade spend is the number one thing.
Can you explain what that is? Because we also wanted to ask you about retail too.
Yeah.
So it's perfect.
Trade spend is what I consider trade spend is basically the cost to get in, so the slotting cost, which is usually for most natural specialty stores is 1 case per flavor per store. And then also are the discounts you give throughout the year to promote, which most expect, 4 2-week promotions a year at least. So when I budget it, it's usually 20% if you're in the first 2 years of your business, just because every time you open a door, you're giving away a case per SKU. So
that's a free fill for everyone listening.
Yeah, free fill
means free product the first time you get an order from a store. And if it's a couple hundred stores even, that means you're giving a couple hundred cases out.
100%.
Yeah, for free.
Until it sells.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's it's usually $100 to $200, easily for each store.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like that 20% comes off. So if you're, that's the number one cost, and then, and I guess, let's say we're selling spaghetti sauce for $9.99, just to make it easy for all of us. The retailer's going to take 40%, call it, from the retail price. So you're down to $5.99, and then the distributor, let's say, is going to take just 10%, just to be simple. So you're down to $4.99. You really want to be then making 55. Let's call it 50% to call it easy. So it's like now my math sucks, but $2.49.
This is actually very helpful though. But for people listening, how you back into the pricing.
You always have to back into pricing.
Yeah.
You can't build.
You start
pricing
from the top and you go down and you say, okay, who's taking a cut? Who's taking a cut? Who's taking a cut? But I mean, a lot of food brands don't have the luxury of having a 50% margin on the first.
Well, so it's they don't have luxury, but so you want it to be 50% product margin, so it's like 30% margin.
Correct.
After that 20% trade spend. So, so you want to be making that jar of pasta sauce for $2.49 in order to be, on shelf at $9.99.
So isn't that crazy that customers don't realize? They go, oh, look at this pasta sauce for $9.99 on the shelf. That's insane.
Yeah.
But it was $2.49, and then they're only making that $1 and change or whatever you just did, $2 or something.
You're only making $2.49 off that.
So
and that's without even a promo.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
without promos.
Yeah.
So that you're only making $2.49 on that $9.99, and 20% of that's going to disappear at least. And then the rest goes to your overhead of running your business, which, so.
And then a lot of people don't know that the brand actually covers the cost of the promo.
Yeah, 100%.
So a lot of times it falls back on the store, but it's really not.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's what I was kind of trying to say earlier is, basically, well, I guess there's no better way to say it than shit rolls down the hill, and, the brand is at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
the retailers and the brand.
Yeah, no, but this is why we started this podcast, though. It's to actually look at a product on shelf and not just go, oh, whatever, or like that whatever. I mean, that's the price that it is. Like, why is it that price? Like, how did that brand get to that price? Is it from the store? The store is making the most money from that price, but it's just to really understand. And that's why Anna and I started this, because before we got into the CPG space, we had no idea that it was like this, that the brand is barely making anything from the retail space.
Well, the brand is barely making anything, and even if you go the route of like, I'm going to deliver to 50 stores, right?
Yeah.
Like, then you have to manage 50 relationships. You have to manage 50 accounts receivable. So you can't.
Correct.
It's a game of scale. It's like you have to be smart about how you scale, but at the end of the day, like. And it's hard to scale. I mean, I always used to tell people in ice cream, like, I think I made $3.50 per pint when I made Steve's. And I was like, if I want to make $3 million or $3.5 million gross, I have to sell 1 million pints. Like, I have to make and ship 1 million pints.
That's amazing.
Which, there's a lot of tech money that has come into the space. Like, since I started doing this, and like that was always things I tell the guys who come from tech. It's like, this isn't like some like platform you build it and then it's like, oh, you can scale. It's like you have to make and ship this stuff. Like, it's like it's a tangible thing, and there's spoilage and there's this and there's that. But
and then back to what you just said. So Vito, who is my former boss, and he always said regarding distribution, it's an accounting nightmare if you want to go direct to store. So there are some stores where you can theoretically ship the product to the independent stores. We still do some direct wholesale for French Squirrel where, you know, different coffee shops, bagel shops want our product and they don't want to go through a distributor. They want it directly from French Squirrel to their shop. But if you're trying to scale and grow the business, it's an accounting nightmare. Because then you're chasing money from all these different vendors instead of the benefit of a distributor is they're paying for the product. It's a one-shot cost. They distribute the product and they handle the supplier relations and the accounting. Yeah,
and I mean, frankly, you know, retailers are just like every other business. Some of them are cash strapped and don't, you know, are late paying their bills. And
that's a segue into my next question too. How do you deal with distributors who don't pay on time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I think the best way to avoid it is to work with, you know, reputable people. And that's why I think working with smaller distributors in the beginning is better because, you know, one of the reasons I have a strong relationship with, you know, Rainforest is, you know, when I was at Steve's, like sometimes they'd pay me late and I could pick up the phone and be like, hey, you know, to their CEO and be like, I really need to get paid, and he'd do it. And then sometimes I'd be short on product, and I'd call him up and be like, sorry, you know, I need you to work with me on this, and he would. So you really built a relationship over helping each other through tough things. But I think for the big guys, I think there's a lot of technology coming out to help manage deductions and also manage like
AI software. I heard.
In most cases, it's usually just a bureaucracy thing with the big guys, not someone trying to not pay you. So I think it's just working with your SRM, building that relationship, and you know, staying on top of it from a billing standpoint. With some of the people who, you know, don't want to pay or they want to say, you know, there's a ton of chargebacks, I think you need to be checking in what your chargebacks are so you're not surprised when you get a check. You know, I think one of the brands I work with, I think we got a check the other day for, you know, like $5,000 on like $12,000 of you know, bills because of all the chargebacks. So you're not like shocked by that, and then you dispute the ones that you think are you know. So I think it's a big part of the game that, you know, you have to play if you're going to go the broadliner route.
Yeah, I think that's good advice because to not go into those big distributors until you're ready to possibly and likely not get paid on time, especially if you're new, and that's happened with us for French Squirrel, and emailing, staying on top of it, but it is a bureaucracy and you just sometimes can't reach anyone. Like you said, the benefit of calling somebody up on the phone and talking to a human being. I mean, that's like invaluable. And then when you're talking to people at these big distributors, you can't even get across the first line.
I do think too, I mean, look, it really is dependent. I don't want to plug something in a generalization, but it's dependent on the company. But I really think like looking at factoring or AR receivables financing to help you grow, I think is helpful. And one of the reasons I actually think it's helpful, obviously it gives you the cash. It gives you like 85% of the invoice the day you ship it, which is helpful for a business, obviously. You don't have to wait to get paid. But actually one of the other reasons I think it's really beneficial is, you know, part of their fee, you know, they're kind of responsible for collection. So if something goes past the 30 days, like, you know, you've already gotten the cash to run your business. It's something that's more, you can count on it. But also, too, they usually have collections departments, and they usually they have multiple.
That's their job.
Multiple companies dealing with UNFI and KeHE and TJ Maxx.
Let's talk about that offline, because I think I need to.
Yeah, some people avoid it, and I think like there are reasons to avoid it, but I think like honestly, one of the reasons is like as part of that fee, they're going to help you with collections, and like. It's better to have the money that you need to run the business and know you have it and have someone helping you do collections than it is to be alone waiting for a UNFI check or ACH.
And I enjoy working with you because like you get me and we laugh half the time, but like, you understand how I work.
Yeah. Well, I think the huge part of it is what we're doing is good. We're like, food is amazing. Yeah. Getting good food into people's hands is amazing. And doing, like, I love your products, because they're really unique, like both of them. Like one, yours is more health oriented, but yours is healthy but also indulgent. And they're both really unique in doing something interesting. So we do it for the love of that, but like also it's like you have to have fun. No one would get into this industry if you don't have fun doing it and you love food. Otherwise it would be quite the grind.
Absolutely. And somebody asked me this week, how do you have the motivation to keep doing it every single day? When you have, I know we spoke about all the, the things that are not so fun, but people need to hear it, of course. But I think Anna, and I can speak for Anna on this, we keep doing it every day because we have fun genuinely doing it. And we're passionate about making the food space better. And it is broken. We've become disconnected to a lot of our food, but we're trying to fix that. So
100%. I think it's also fun to see your friends grow, fun to see, fun to get into accounts. And it's always, you get the emails and the feedback of people who love your product, and it's like, it's really fun.
Okay, and then bonus question, and I think this is a great place to cap it because we ended on a high note, which is you have to have fun with this. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
What does UNFI stand for?
United Natural Foods, Inc.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, and KHE?
Ooh. I don't know. Okay,
so it actually doesn't stand for anything.
Okay, good.
It's the last name of two founders that founded KHE.
What does Pod Food stand for?
I don't know. What does Pod Food stand for? And also Rainforest, for people listening, is a distributor in New York.
Yeah.
So
New York, they do like Northern Virginia.
Okay.
To Maine.
Anyways. Okay, well, that was super valuable, Forbes. Thank you.
No worries.
I feel like I was just in school for a CPG product in the best way possible. Like, that was very well laid out. And I think that people need to hear things like this and hear about distribution, hear about pricing models and mistakes that other founders have made to learn from it,
100%.
And negotiating and manufacturing. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, that was amazing. Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Barcode. We hope you enjoyed diving into the stories behind the products that fill your shelves. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite listening platform.
Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. You can find everything linked in the show notes. And if you have a story to share or know someone who does, we'd love to hear from you.
Keep innovating, inspiring, and being curious about the stories behind the barcode. See you on the next episode.